Well, what do we have here? MrBeast done got sued. Let's look at the lawsuit. Here is the docket, and I don't know if I'm just out of the loop. I don't know if I'm just not seeing it popping up on my feed or whatever, but I did not see anybody talking about this lawsuit, and it was filed over a month ago. Look, November 18th, 2024. Complaint filed against MrBeast YouTube LLC by a person named Brittany Carter. Okay, as you can see on November 19th, when it cleared the docket, also a notice of appearance for Brittany Carter's attorney, who is Joseph Douglas Budd. He enters his notice of appearance. She puts in her financial disclosure statement, and then there's a summons to MrBeast YouTube LLC. So let's see what that said, and then we will look further. So here is the actual complaint, the lawsuit filing. Again, this was filed on November 19th, 2024. That was just last month. Today is December 30th. So that was last month, November. Okay. And what is Brittany, Miss Carter, suing for? She is suing in this complaint filed last month. She's suing for unpaid wages, overtime, compensatory damages, liquidated damages, attorney's fees, and all of this is stemming from allegations of violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is like, the federal employment statute. And then, of course, the state one, North Carolina. She did sue. Brittany Carter sued in the Eastern District of North Carolina. It's a federal court. She is currently living in Washington. She is an adult and she is competent. She was an employee of the defendant. Now, who's the defendant? That's MrBeast YouTube LLC. She was an employee of the defendant and performed work for the defendant at its primary place of business in Greenville, North Carolina. MrBeast YouTube LLC is a limited liability company organized and operated under the laws of the state of North Carolina. They have a principal place of business in Greenville. Brittany Carter says at all times relevant, MrBeast YouTube was her employer within the meaning of the statute. She goes ahead and says that jurisdiction here applies. And she says on or about July 19th, 2022, that's when she started working for MrBeast YouTube as a producer. She was a producer and she started working there summer 2022. She relocated, she says, from California to Greenville, North Carolina to work for MrBeast YouTube. At the outset of her employment, she executed a contract called an Independent Contractor Services Agreement. This is July 19th, 2022. As part of her compensation from defendant, the company provided her with an apartment through its housing liaison. So we've heard this allegation out and about and around by other people who have claimed to have worked for MrBeast in the past. I don't know if it's true or not, but I have heard it before. That one of the benefits of working for MrBeast and his companies, over there in Greenville is that you are afforded some type of housing. So the lawsuit goes on. According to the agreement, Miss Carter, that's the plaintiff, was not to receive any employment benefits of any kind or nature. But however, she did start working for MrBeast and she did eventually get an employee handbook. And in this employee handbook, there was a chapter called benefits. And it looked like she was actually being offered vacation leave, sick leave, paid holidays because they gave her this employee handbook. The employee handbook also contained a section titled Performance Standards, which governed conduct and employees were required to obey. One such performance standard specifically addressed employee attendance and tardiness, instructing employees that they had to be punctual in reporting for work. Another one of these performance standards was employees were prohibited from holding other jobs without getting consent from their MrBeast supervisor. Upon the commencement of her employment, Brittany says she was assigned an email address with the company, brit@mrbeastyoutube.com. Please don't email that email address. I'm assuming that it's no longer in service. Further, on September 9th, 2022, the defendant, which is MrBeast YouTube, authorized this person, Brittany Carter, to sign a non-disparagement agreement on behalf of the company. So they're saying that Brittany is saying that she was allowed by MrBeast YouTube to enter into agreements on the behalf of MrBeast YouTube. So she was a lot more than just an independent contractor they're trying to allege in this lawsuit. MrBeast YouTube required the plaintiff here, as a producer, to be present for daily 9 a.m. meetings. She also was not allowed to leave work earlier than 5 p.m. Now, a lot of y'all are going to hear this and be like, so what? This sounds like normal rules for a job. Like, no one can just get up and leave work before 5 p.m. Well, actually, yes, they can. And you know who it is? Independent contractors. Okay. This is a very important distinction in the law, and it would be a very important distinction in this particular case. And it happens over and over again. And it's talked about all day, every day, ad nauseum, all the time. Because if you employ someone as an employer, like you're the boss and they're the employee, then there's a certain legal relationship that's established. Certain laws come into play, certain protections come into play. But sometimes someone isn't your employee if they're just doing like one little job for you or something. So there's a distinction in the law. If somebody is just kind of like, let's say someone's your lawyer or your doctor, they're not really your employee. If you just have them, say it's a lawyer, say they're representing you for one or two cases, they can kind of choose their own schedule, right? They're not coming to your house to work on it. They probably got a law firm they're working at, stuff like that. Just as long as the stuff gets filed, you're really not supervising them that much. You don't have employment conduct standards. You're not telling them what uniform they can wear every day. All the things I just listed are things that a court would look at to determine, are you an employee who gets protections of employee employment law, or were you just simply an independent contractor, which gets different, separate, and less protections? So if somebody were to have to come to work, for example, every day for 9 a.m. and not be able to leave before 5 p.m., then they're required to be there all day. Well, all working day, right? So in that case, that's going to lean a marble on the scale on the side of employee, right? Because the person can't leave. Their movement is restricted throughout the day. They're required to be somewhere at a certain time. They're required to not leave before a certain time. So that's why they're saying that. They're not saying like, oh, poor thing, she had to work. It's like, no, she wasn't an independent contractor. She was an employee. That's what they're trying to argue, Brittany Carter. Defendant required Miss Carter to promptly respond to calls and messages any time of the day, on all days of the week. See, again, this is leaning more toward more control over the schedule, more control over when you're available, more control over how fast you respond, stuff like that. That's leaning more toward employee than independent contractor. She regularly worked more than 40 hours per week. In fact, she averaged approximately 70 to 75 hours per week working for MrBeast YouTube. Brittany Carter was not exempt from overtime pay, so they're just saying that she was an employee under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Paragraph 37 alleges defendant, that's MrBeast YouTube, misclassified Miss Carter as an independent contractor, when in fact she was an employee under the Fair Labor Standards Act and the North Carolina Fair Wages Act, Wages and Hours Act, maybe. She was required to comply with the defendant's policies and procedures. She was supervised by other employees of the defendants, and she was subject to discipline. She received all of her assignments from MrBeast YouTube, and she relied on MrBeast YouTube for her work assignments. Again, more and more and more factors, we'll call them little proverbial marbles that we're putting on the side of the scale that weighs in favor of her being an employee. The lawsuit alleges defendant, that's MrBeast YouTube LLC, misclassified Brittany Carter as an independent contractor to avoid the pay requirements of overtime and the fair wages and stuff like that. That's what they're alleging, that he did this to avoid paying her fairly under the law. The work performed by Brittany Carter was integral to defendant's business. Defendant, MrBeast YouTube LLC, profited directly from Brittany's work. And defendant, MrBeast YouTube LLC, failed to pay an overtime premium to Brittany Carter for all hours worked over 40 hours in a work week. So that is pretty much the entire thing. I mean, we pretty much just read it together. Now, what I find the most interesting of this whole entire lawsuit so far is the following. Let me bring that docket back up. And if you were looking at it earlier, you might have even noticed it and said something about it. But look at this. Just today, just literally today, this case was selected for mediation. And if you look at the original complaint, which we just read from Brittany Carter, it says as clear as day, black and white, right up there at the top, jury trial demanded. She wants a jury trial, not mediation demanded. That's not what she said. She wanted a jury trial. Now, my next thought was, well, maybe MrBeast YouTube LLC will had that like some type of mediation arbitration agreement that this lady signed. And maybe she had agreed to handle all of this in arbitration or mediation. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe. But don't you think that you would have seen that being filed somewhere? I mean, everything was filed, complaint against MrBeast YouTube, then notice of appearance on the behalf of Brittany's lawyer, the plaintiff's lawyer. She puts in this financial disclosure statement. She issues a summons to MrBeast YouTube LLC, and all of this happens on November 19th. Then a couple days later, there's a waiver of service returned executed by Brittany Carter. And then it says there was an answer due. Some type of answer was due. I mean, I don't know anything more than y'all. I'm reading it right here. But just, I mean, I don't know, seemingly out of nowhere, the case was selected for mediation. What? Is that something that happens in North Carolina? Your case can just get you can demand a jury trial and then your case just gets kicked down to the mediation level in federal court? Or maybe did MrBeast YouTube LLC file something ex parte with the judge? I mean, I cannot imagine that they filed something with the judge and with a court that's not in any way accounted for. I mean, look, it skips straight from waiver of service to case selected for mediation. And it just says a printable list of certified mediators for the Eastern District of North Carolina and the selection of mediator form are available on the court's website. That decision just came out today. How? What? So, I mean, the reason it's an issue to me is because this is a matter of high public import and concern. Indeed, and in fact, I'm making a video about it. I'm a member of the public. Y'all are watching it. You're members of the public. So people want to know what's going on with this company. And that is the reason why court filings are supposed to be public. Well, look, there's a public court filing from just last month. And from the looks of things, it's about to just go clean off the record, which I believe violates our rights. I believe this violates our rights unless there was some type of contract agreed upon. That's all I really have for right now. I'll keep y'all updated. But again, my prediction is that that's it. That's all she wrote. And when we won't hear further about it, it's very frustrating from the perspective of accountability and transparency. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation, and neither is reading the public court docket and speculating since we have to because it's about to go private. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye.